Hello, dear friends. Lit ECT, the YouTube channel dedicated to English literature, welcomes you once again. And in this series, Literary Theory with Lit ECT, we will try to discuss some very important concepts related with literary theory itself. And for today's first episode, I have picked up a very prominent and an important theorist of 1950s, 60s, and 70s. That is, I'm talking about Roland Barthes, the French critic. His contribution in the fields of semiotics, in the field of structuralism, and in his later life in the field of post structuralism is immaculate. And today, in this lecture, we will try to understand his very famous, his radical concept, the death of the author. So let's start our today's topic. Okay, dear friends, let me first tell you something about Roland Barthes, or in French we pronounce his name as Roland Barthes. He is a central figure in study of language, literature, culture, and media studies also. His contribution in later fields of cultural studies, later fields of, we can say, he is a very important figure in all the current debates. He was both an innovator and also a guide, because he continuously changed his stance, changed his theories, and he has a reputation as a philosopher and a writer who was very influential both in structuralism and later in post structuralism also. This shows that how versatile and how ever changing this man was in his attitudes. Now, during 1960s, his investigations into the nature of language and science took a post-structuralist turn. Dear friends, we all are very much aware of this fact. The radical political events of the late 1960s, they are matched in particularly in France by the emergence of radical ideas associated with philosophers like Derrida, Julia Kristeva, Foucault, Baudrillard, and Philip Sollers, among others. These new ideas, these ideas promoted and propounded by these great philosophers, they have subsequently been grouped under the broad category of post-structuralism. Dear friends, post-structuralism is basically, we can say, a set of ideas which tend to reject, which tend to question the long-held assumption of Western metaphysics. जो भी थॉट्स थे वेस्टर्न मेटाफिजिक्स के, द सेंट्रलिटी ऑफ मीनिंग, द रोल ऑफ ऑथर, और वी कैन से इम्पॉर्टेंस ऑफ स्पीच और राइटिंग, all these were questioned, all these were rejected, refused, countered by these post-structuralists, and the role of Roland Barthes is equally important in this context. His very famous essay, The Death of the Author, it was first published by Richard Howard. A very interesting fact is that first it was published translated in English, later it was published in original French, and another important fact that when it was first published in an American cultural journal, Aspen, this is name of the journal in which it was first published. ये जो जर्नल था, it mixed poetry, pop culture, jazz songs along with some serious essays. Barthes himself was interested in all these aspects which reflects much in his works. Stephen Heath, he was the next translator of the essay, and his translation in 1977 edition of Barthes' anthology Image, Music, Text. This is the name of an anthology of essays written by Barthes during 60s and 70s. This essay was again translated by Stephen Heath, and it is now considered to be the standard version. The main gist, or we can say the central idea of this rather small essay is that it is concerned with where a text's meaning lies. Who holds the key to the meaning of the text? What is the, we can say, what is the source of interpretation of a text? And this path-breaking essay provides us with new critical thinking. We can't say that Barthes attempted something totally new. There were already some attempts by poets like, we can say, Malam and Paul Valéry, by philosophers like Michel Foucault, but still he gave us a very systematic dissection and analysis of the traditional point of view and contrasted with the modern point of view, and he made us see that a text is not just literary text, but a text is basically a place in which meaning is coded and the spectator is there to decode it. Now, traditionally, dear friends, basically a work is, we can divide a work into three major parts. On one side, we have author, which traditionally is considered to be the originator, the producer of something. We can say the author creates, and in traditional sense he is thus at the center of meaning generation. Then we have the text, which is in a language, which is we can say a sign system. Basically a text is what the author writes, and then in the end we have the reader. And now traditionally reader was not given much importance until, we can say, a new criticism, reader response theory, post structuralism. These theories bring to the front the importance of the reader, but still we can say that all these three aspects have basically bewitched critics according what should be the priority given to the particular part, whether author is the most important one, or the text is the most important one, or the reader is the one where the meaning lies. Dear friends, it's a small request. If you find this channel helpful, please help me promote this channel, subscribe to it, share it with your friends. Okay, continuing with our this essay, as I have already told you that in the humanist and the romantic notions about the text, author had the central position. Central position means we treat author that he holds the key. Author के पास ही क्या होती है, total key होती है interpretation की, and the biography of the author, individual traits, they were considered of primary importance to understand a text because they provided insight into the intention of the writing. Now you may think that we are talking only about writers. No, an author and text may be something. For example, we have Gogh. Vincent Gogh, there were bout of madness, so his paintings is a result of his particular illness. Then we have also Virginia Woolf. She also had that we can say traumatic experiences and nervous breakdown. Sylvia Plath, another thing. We try to point out their personal life inputs to understand their literary outputs. So the author is, we should not here in simple terms discuss about Wordsworth, his surroundings role in making him a particular poet of nature, or we can say the gloomy circumstances of Keats' life or his particular concept of negative capability. These are too simple. Even we say that very nuanced जिसके अंदर literature है वो भी हम we try to find the roots into the psyche of the author. Author को हम किसी तरह से analyze करते हैं what may be the reason and where lies the meaning. Now Barthes notes that the author has always functioned within the capitalist society. This is now here he takes a post-structuralist turn, and he says that author has always been the anchor of a literary work signifiers. He holds the key. He is responsible. He or she is responsible for creating the meaning, the origin of all the work's meaning. He is like a divine figure. He is a father figure. He is like a god. The author gives stability and order to the work. Very simple analogy में हम इसमें समझना चाहें, work is like the child of the author, and author holds the work in his or her hands, and अगर आपको वो समझना है you have to look at the author, और आपको author की तरफ देखेंगे you can find in him or her the meaning of the text. Now first it was the school of new criticism, as most of you know about this, that how the new critics, they argued, even before new critics we have T.S. Eliot talking about that we have to efface the personality of the poet to understand the poem. Then we have new critics, they argued against this assumption of the putting author into central position or giving importance to the authorial intention, this very important concept of intentional fallacy, when we try to find the intention of the author to understand the meaning of the text. So new criticism was already working on this thing. अगर न्यू क्रिटिसिज्म ऐसा कर रहा था, then what is different? What Barthes did was but took the ideas of the new critics to the next level by pointing out there can't be one definite meaning of the text, and also by treating the reader not as particular physical person but an abstract conceptual space where all possible meanings of a text are contained. What he did was that not only author is meaningless, only text is there, and even reader is not an individual. Here he is different from other reader response theorists, other new critics. उनके हिसाब से reader was an entity, an individual. Second thing is that new critics think that there is the text is a very organic kind of form and there is one final meaning. But Barthes, what he says that there is nothing like that. Like author, reader is also an abstract conceptual space. There is no particular, जिसको अपन कहते हैं कि इंसान या फिर one particular individual. No, it is a space. All possible meanings of a text are contained. It means a person is free to create a text according to his or her understanding, his or her conception of the text. So inception has become conception. A person can deliberately, we can say, change the meaning, or he or me, because of certain, we can say, restriction, certain distraction, किसी भी वजह से हो सकता है कि the reading of a reader is different from the reading of another reader, and this is the main difference between new critics and Roland Barthes. Now friends, the radical celebration of plurality and the infinite play of meaning. If this seems very familiar to you, infinite play of meaning, we have seen this in Derrida's deconstruction, where he says there is no stable relationship between a sign and signifier, this is the hallmark of post-structuralism. Instability. And literary and other kinds of work. By 1968, it had become associated with a number of key terms. I'm going to tell you a very important name, Textual. Textual theory in particular and post-structuralist work in general. It would be very beneficial if we have a line about Textual. Now, Textual is the title of an influential theoretical journal published between 1960 and 1983 in France. The journal takes its name from the title of a work by the French writer Paul Valéry, and it began with a concern to celebrate literature tel quel, which in English means such as it is. Philip Sollers was its first editor, and many important theorists of the time, I have already quoted them, Julia Kristeva, Michel Foucault, Derrida, and obviously Roland Barthes. They all published some very important work in this particular magazine. Now, the explanation of a work is always sought in the person who produced it, as if the work is a mirror image of the voice of a single person, the author confiding in us. Obviously, the later critics or the post-structuralist critics denies writing to a single fixed source, the author. They say, according to Barthes, a text is unfinished until it is read by readers. This is the, we can say, the radical claim or the reason behind the title, The Death of the Author. What is the reason? A text is not complete until it is taken into hands by some readers. Since reader could put forth different interpretation, every reading writes the text anew. This is what Barthes wants to point out, that there is no fixed text, there is no fixed meaning. Reader comes, reader goes, reader create a meaning. Next reader comes, next reader reads, and then the meaning is once again changed. Every time the text is read, there is a new text is written in those pages. Thus, writing is the destruction of every voice, of every point of origin. Instead, writing is also a neutral, composite, oblique space where different type of interpretation, they clash with each other. Different type of signifier and signified combinations, they clash with each other, and all readers try to create their own sense of meaning out of the text. A very simple example can tell us what is the problem with this concept, thinking that the author is the final source of the meaning. This is line from one of the celebrated plays by Shakespeare, King Lear. No, no, no life. Why should a dog, a horse, a rat have life and no breath at all? Obviously, King Lear is speaking when he witnessed the death of his dear daughter Cordelia. It is in the end of the play. Now, who has spoken these lines? If we take a look at these lines and then we put a thought on it, is the protagonist or the King Lear the tragic figure? Lear is speaking out of grief for the death of his daughter. Is it Shakespeare, the person who is also suffering from the personal tragedy of the death of his son Hamlet? He is basically showing his own grief through the character of Lear. Is it Shakespeare, the writer, presenting his view about life, death and fate, his individual opinion about the tragic circle of the life? Is it the Elizabethan voice of general assumptions regarding universe? At that time, what was considered to be the role of fate or the tragic consequences? Or is it some para-literary voice talking about the harsh fact of life? Some we can say, pearls of wisdom thrown at the spectators? We cannot say. What we can say, what inspired Shakespeare to write these lines? This may be the man, this may be the writer, this may be the universal voice, this may be the character. Every reader who read these lines, the reader basically is bound to interpret according to his or her own interpretation. So basically texts are comprised of written words. There must be some writing process. Obviously if there is text, there are written words, so there is some writing process involved in its makeup. Now Barthes argues that this writing process should not be described as being performed by an author. Now traditionally we say that an author creates or writes the text. Now Barthes says that no, he doesn't perform the text, he doesn't create the text. There is a neutral hypothetical entity, the scriptor. This is the term Barthes used instead of writer, because scriptor is what? He is just putting some words on the page to be read, to be interpreted by the later readers. Historically, writing is considered as inferior to the sound. Always we know that sound is associated with the present according to Derrida, and writing is about absence. So always phonology is given, we can say that is known as phonocentrism. Speech is put into the center. Writing process is also considered inferior because it is time consuming and it can't keep the pace with one's thought and passion. We can think quite quickly with passion, but in writing it is not possible to keep the match of the flow of thought. But when we replace the author with scriptor, the writing hand is cut off from voice. This is exactly the phrase used by Barthes in this particular essay, cut off from the voice. When we have scriptor, there is nothing like the voice is dictating the writer. Writer is just an automated hand putting word after word after word. The final sentence of the essay is the culmination of Barthes' argument. It states, the birth of the reader must be at the cost of the death of the author. What a juxtaposition. It's in traditional sense, we can say it's a paradox. If we want to create a reader, if we want a text to be actualized by some reader, the author have to be dead. The cost is the death of the author. These are some lines from the text which are quite important one. He says, a text's unity lies not in its origin but in its destination. It may be written by the author, but until it reaches the reader, it is useless, lifeless. Yet this destination cannot any longer be personal. So once again, reader cannot be treated just as an individual. The reader is without history, biography, psychology. He is simply that someone who holds together in a single field all the traces. You may remember Derrida once again, by which the written text is constituted. Reader is basically sitting or with the text in the hand, and he is at liberty. He is totally free to decode the text as per its whim. Now, the text is thus not the author's own at all. We cannot claim that this is the baby of the author, creation of the author. It comprises a wealth of discourses and reader interpretation. Once again, I would like to quote from the text. We know now that a text consists not of a line of words releasing a single theological meaning. Theological here means the message of the author God, but of a multi-dimensional space in which are married and contested. There is continuous struggle between the signifier and signifieds, none of which is original. The text is a fabric of quotations resulting from 1,000 sources of culture. Very frequently quoted phrase of Barthes in this context is, each text is always already written. Okay, moving to our last slide, we can add something of our own in this context. A very relevant example of this lack of any authorial control over text is recent internet practices such as crowdsourcing or online phenomena as community edit pages. Wikipedia, we can say the largest source of information at the present time. We see that it is community edited. Anyone can enter a Wikipedia entry and edit it. Widespread copy and dissemination of data between internet users. The ease with which we make use of memes and retweeting, post forwarding mean that everyday internet users deal with online texts which are not owned by a single definable author but are in many ways open to all. What you would say about these texts? Who is the author of these texts? There is not one author. You cannot reach the source of the meaning, original generator. Every time a message is passed from one channel to another channel, something is omitted, something is added, something is changed, edited. A meme is just a template where you can put your own ideas again and again and again, the same template and different ideas by different users. We retweeting, somebody has written something and somebody else is retweeting it, and the next we can say set of consumers or readers reading it. So it has become the line that differentiate between the author and the reader is totally blurred. Everyone is now a reader and now an author also. So we can say finally what Roland Barthes has said in the death of the author has reached its culmination. Okay, friend, this was my interesting interpretation of his essay. I hope I am able to make it clear to you, friends. Very soon we will come with some new lessons on some very important critical concepts. Keep watching, keep sharing, keep supporting. Thank you, dear friends.